Hi, this is Rachelle with Journal Life's Journey, and I am back to work on the bits and pieces of the Coffin Journal book cover. So this is an insert that I had previously started, and I'm going to try and wrap this one up and get it ready to be installed on one of the flaps. So I'm doing some matting here. But the reason I'm doing this way is to show the full process. A lot of times I want to know how people are coming up with the things that they're coming up with. I would like to see an example of how they put it together. I see a lot of flip throughs, but not a whole lot of tutorials showing all the small details. And I don't know, I need to see the details. So I figure I'm not the only one. So I'm showing the details. And I can't say that I'm doing any of this the right way. It's just kind of what I think. I'm basically winging it and coming up with ideas on the fly. I do take breaks in between a lot of this just to think and decide how I want to handle it and what I want to do next. And I tend to use a lot of my scraps. So even here with this little, I don't know even what kind of piece to call it. I guess it's going to be like a belt piece. Even with that, that's a scrap. And I don't know, I just feel like I need to make the most of all those little bits and pieces that are left over. And I do go out of frame quite a bit in this video. I'm trying to do better. I'm still trying to get used to using a webcam. I'm using a webcam because I can record much longer using that versus my camera and an SD card. So I don't have to worry about running out of space on my computer if I use the webcam. So that's technical stuff. But yeah, I am rounding the corners on the flaps because I don't want those pointed corners to end up being bent. A lot of times that's the reason that I round the corners. And I'm also re-inking those. And the inking is so that the white core of the paper doesn't show. It also adds a grungy, more vintage, old look to the paper. So that's another reason for the inking. Here I am just marking the center. I'm going to punch and add eyelets on this piece. But yeah, I always want to know, how do you decide how to do the flips and flaps? How do you know where you want to put pockets? And so I figured I would just show the whole process instead of just showing a final flip through or bits and pieces of how I make ephemera here and there. And there will be a need for a lot of ephemera for this project. My original goal here was to use up my paper pads. So you've seen me use a lot of scrapbook paper, and I'll be using some of my other stash things that I have, like Tim Holtz paper dolls and things like that, Tim Holtz ephemera. And I was trying my best to stay away from using any digitals, but I may allow myself to use some digitals. And instead of buying digitals, I'll have to use digitals that I already have in my stash because I think I'm going to need something else to add ephemera to this. So I start out with this thin piece of ribbon. I have a bunch of that I'm trying to use up, but it was a little too short and I really didn't like the way it looked. So I got a wider piece. I think the other thin ribbon was about 1/8 of an inch, and I think this is about 1/4 to 3/8 inch ribbon. So I'm threading that through this little buckle piece, and I'm going to use that as a closure to hold these two flaps closed. And I'm going to use my artist tape to tape the ribbon in place. Also on this project, I am trying to practice not worrying about so much what style papers I use. I have a few paper pads that I'm pulling from, and if the paper fits or the scrap fits the space that I need, then I'm using it and not thinking too hard about, does this match, does that match? I think the paper pads that I'm using all go well with each other. So I'm not really worrying too much about that. Normally I would be, okay, I gotta make this match this and this match that. with this project, I'm trying to steer away from that. So I'm gluing down my little buckle piece, and I put glue on the end where I didn't need it. So I'm going to end up having to wipe that off. And I'm just trying to line that up in the center as best as I can and keep the ribbon as straight as possible. Got a little glue on the flap, so I'm removing that and using the glue remover to remove the excess glue from the back of the buckle piece. And I can also use the ribbon as a belly band, so I'm adding a little more tape just to make sure that's good and tight so that when I slide something in there, it will hold it. Tying my bow and trimming off the ends of the ribbon. So I think that is good for the outside of this flip that will go on a flap in the final book. So now I'm going to add the elements on the inside after I remove a little bit more glue. So previously I had created these little envelopes using the We Are Memory Keepers envelope punch board, and I created them to go in this piece, and I'm just laying them out to see how I want to add them. I was thinking they could overlay each other a little bit, but I think because it's cardstock, it's a little too bulky for that, so I'm not going to do that. And I'm just rounding the corners of the flaps and the bottom flap. I could trim that off and go straight across the envelope, but I decided just to round it. And now I'm going to go ahead and ink up the envelopes. And I'm going to use some Tim Holtz stamps to add a little decorative element on the inside of the envelope so that it won't just be a white space on the inside of the flap. I'm going to start with the skull. This is the first time I'm using this skull. And I should have test stamped it first, but I stamped it directly on the paper and it's like a light gray. It's not really a dark black, which is fine. It's kind of subtle in the background, but from there on, I will test the stamps mostly. I think testing it not only shows you what kind of impression you're going to get, it allows you to add more ink so that you will get a darker impression. At least that's, in my experience, that's what happened. So I tested this one, I inked it, tested it, and inked it again, and I'm going to get a much better impression doing that. See? Okay, so I like that. I kind of try to do themes on each section of this book, journal cover. So I kind of thought of this section as like the Undertaker section. I wanted the overall theme to be kind of a vampire theme where it's like a collection of things over the years. Since the original idea was to make the Coffin composition notebook. Uh, so a coffin I would associate with vampires, being that this was supposed to be a Halloween project. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. So I stamped some more with those Tim Holtz stamps, and here I'm using this crackle stencil that I have to add some more elements around where I stamped. So this was for the Casket Company. This is the Undertaker flap. And then I'm using the swirl stencil from Tim Holtz. The stencils help fill in the space around the stamp where there was nothing there. Gives it more of a decorative look. So when you open the envelope, there's something there for you to see. So I'm going to go ahead and seal these envelopes. So now I'm just trying to figure out how am I going to keep the flaps closed on these envelopes. I'm burnishing down the fold just to help them stay closed a little bit better, but I've decided to put some type of closure on. So I'm going to use these wide eyelets from We Are Memory Keepers. I've already punched the holes and I'm going to set the eyelets. And I'm using that brown color because I feel like it goes with the other colors in that particular insert. So the backgrounds, it helps, I think, tie it all together. So I have this hemp string. It's really thin and I've used it other places in this project. So I'm really trying to use it as much as possible versus just using the black ribbon. So I'm using a mixture of the hemp string and the ribbon for closures. And so because I have the 3 envelopes, I figured the hemp would be better since I have quite a bit of it. Now it is very thin and stiff, but I'm hoping that over time it will loosen up and I will eventually change the way that the string is fed through these. But for now, I'm just pretty much making sure that it's long enough to tie them shut. And I'm going to go in and add my artist tape to the back to hold the string in place. And I'm going to make each of these a pocket. So I'm only going to add glue to 2 sides in the bottom, and I'll leave the top open so that they can be a pocket as well as an envelope. And I'm using the Fabri-Tac for this because that paper underneath that I'm gluing them to has a embossing treatment on it. So I want to make sure that this sticks and the Fabri-Tac is a strong glue. So I'm just trying to train the string to lay in the right place so that it's not hanging out all over the sides. It still is, but I'll figure out something for that. I may put some little pulls or dangles on the ends, and I'll probably end up trimming those up. But for now, I'm going to leave them long until I decide what I want to do. And that is it. So the little envelopes, we have 3 pockets behind them, and whatever I put in the pocket could also act as somewhat of a closure. But I think this turned out really nice. I still need to do some type of decorating on the outside of this, but for now the inside is good. Be sure to check out the previous videos for this project. Everything is linked in the description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. There will be more videos coming, so stay tuned and I'll holler at y'all next time. Bye.